At 0631 hours on February 25, 1945, high above the western Pacific, the sky looked thin and sharp. A cold blue stretched across the battle for Iwo Jima. A formation of B-29 Superfortress bombers pushed upward through gusts of wind that clawed at their wings. Engines rumbled with a steady metal growl. The aircraft climbed past 20,000 feet, then 25,000. Inside the cabin, frost gathered on the windows, and every breath felt like dry ice. The crew held their oxygen masks tight as they scanned the sky for movement. Below them, Japanese fighters scrambled to intercept. The fighters rose fast, their engines screaming in the thin air, but each second exposed a problem the Japanese pilots already feared. The bombers kept climbing, their formation stayed tight. Their speed held firm, guns locked into place. Bomb bay doors remained shut for now, contrails twisted behind the formation with ropes in the wind. The Japanese fighters tried again, stalled, dipped, recovered, and tried once more. The bombers moved higher, steady and unshaken. A gunner whispered to himself as he searched the sky for the first sign of attack. Tension built even before the battle began. Every man felt the pressure of the coming fight. The next few minutes would show why this moment was only the start of something larger. If you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe, like, and share. The rise of the B-29 Superfortress came from urgent need and changing conditions. In early 1942, the United States faced a problem of range. Traditional bombers could not reach the Japanese home islands from available bases. The Pacific theater covered huge distances that demanded a new type of aircraft. Commanders needed a bomber with extreme range, heavy payload, and the ability to survive high-altitude defenses. Engineers at Boeing raced to design such a machine. They introduced new features, including a pressurized cabin, remote-controlled gun turrets, and wings long enough to hold massive fuel loads. The result was a four-engine aircraft with a top speed near 360 miles per hour and a service ceiling above 30,000 feet. It could carry up to 20,000 pounds of bombs. Its defensive guns used advanced sighting systems that promised accuracy at long range. Development depended heavily on the Wright R-3350 duplex Cyclone engine. It offered high power but required careful cooling. Early tests pushed the aircraft to its structural limits. Still, commanders needed an aircraft that could strike Japan from the Marianas, so production pressed ahead. Japanese defenses at the time relied on fighters with limited high-altitude capability and anti-aircraft guns designed for lower altitudes. The new bomber promised to exploit these weaknesses. Every design choice reflected the strategic need to hit distant targets with heavy force. The early stages of the B-29 program brought serious problems. Training units logged thousands of hours, yet accidents remained frequent. Engine fires became a major issue. Overheating struck especially during long climbs, and crews feared sudden loss of power at altitude. One mechanic reported, "The engines run hot, the fire risk is constant, and the margin for error feels thin." In 1943, dozens of aircraft were lost in non-combat incidents. Pressurization failures forced emergency descents. Even experienced pilots struggled with the aircraft's complexity. Tactical misunderstandings also hurt performance. Commanders believed the bombers could fly high and deliver accurate strikes. Early missions proved otherwise. Bombs drifted off target from extreme altitude. Japanese observers mocked the results, recording that the bombers missed more often than they hit. Interceptions during descent added to losses. Reports showed that about 10% of early missions ended with mechanical aborts or emergency landings. Many believed the bomber was too complicated for real combat. Expectations fell as problems mounted. Gradually, crews learned how to manage the aircraft. They adjusted climb rates to control engine temperature. They planned missions with long, steady ascents and kept the pressurization system stable. With experience, they discovered that operating above 30,000 feet changed the battle. At that altitude, most Japanese fighters struggled to climb with enough speed to attack. The B-29's defensive guns became more effective. Remote-controlled turrets allowed gunners to strike fighters before they reached close range. Mission planners saw that altitude was the bomber's strongest weapon. Performance data confirmed the advantage. At optimal altitude, the bomber moved at strong cruising speed and still carried heavy loads. Japanese radar could track the aircraft, but interceptors had trouble reaching firing distance. Pilots learned to use staggered formations to increase defensive fire. Small improvements added up. Throttle changes reduced engine stress. Formation spacing improved mutual protection. With time, the B-29 revealed its full strength. The first major test came on November 24, 1944. During the opening raid from the Marianas to Tokyo, 96 B-29s lifted off from Saipan before sunrise. Their target was the Musashino aircraft factory. Winds pushed at the formation, but crews held steady. Japanese radar detected the approach. Around 60 fighters launched to intercept. The fighters reached nearly 23,000 feet, but the bombers climbed past 28,000. A Japanese pilot later wrote, "They stayed too high. We chased them, but our engines lost power." Anti-aircraft fire burst below the formation. Shock waves rattled the aircraft, but the bombers pressed on. Clouds covered part of the target, so accuracy suffered. Even so, the raid proved a key point. The Japanese could not stop the bombers from reaching Tokyo. A second story unfolded on January 23, 1945, during a raid on Nagoya. 77 B-29s approached in clear weather. Japanese defenses prepared for a full interception. 80 fighters took off to meet them. This time, the interceptors tried climbing partway, then diving from above. A few reached firing position. One bomber in the lead group took hits on its right wing. A gunner shouted, "Right side, incoming, fast." The bomber lost an engine, but stayed in formation. Defensive turrets returned fire. Two Japanese fighters fell trailing smoke. The bombers tightened spacing and continued the attack. They hit an aircraft parts plant with improved accuracy. Losses stayed low. Japanese officers noted that only a few fighters reached effective altitude. A third mission took place during the night of March 9, 1945. This was the start of low-altitude incendiary raids, but the approach used high altitude to avoid early interception. 334 bombers climbed over the coast before descending for the attack. Japanese fighters scrambled, but darkness and poor radar guidance made interception almost impossible. Many pilots never saw the bombers. The raid burned large areas of Tokyo. Though the attack happened at low altitude, the high-altitude approach protected the bomber stream. Another clash occurred on April 7, 1945, near Kyushu. 30 B-29s targeted a fuel storage facility. Weather was clear and cold. Japanese command sent 40 fighters to intercept. Pilots climbed at full power. Engines shook in the thin air. One pilot later wrote, "We saw them ahead, still rising. Our aircraft vibrated. We could not match them. Only a few fighters fired short bursts before falling away." The bombers completed their mission with minor damage. Encounters like these shaped the bomber's reputation. Altitude, range, payload, and defensive firepower became defining strengths. Crews still faced stress and danger on every mission, but the aircraft proved capable of reaching targets once thought unreachable. The strategic value of the B-29 grew as production increased. By mid-1945, more than 3,000 had been built. Each mission required large amounts of fuel, ammunition, and maintenance. Logistics expanded across the Marianas. Airfields housed hundreds of bombers and support crews. A single raid consumed millions of pounds of fuel and thousands of bombs. Sortie rates climbed as crews improved. Japan struggled to match this output. Fighter production dropped as resources disappeared. Training slowed. Industrial centers fell under repeated attack. The bomber campaign weakened Japan's ability to continue the war. Factories closed. Transport networks failed. Aircraft production collapsed. The B-29 became a central tool in the final phase of the conflict. Enemy pilots developed strong reactions to the bomber. Many Japanese pilots felt frustration when they tried to climb toward the formation. They called the B-29s silver whales because of their size and shine at altitude. One pilot wrote, "They stay above us, engines shake. We fire when we can, but they climb again." Ground observers felt helpless as bombers crossed overhead. Civilians heard the distant rumble before bombs fell. Morale dropped as raids grew frequent. Many defenders believed the bomber represented a height they could not challenge. Late in the war, the B-29 continued to improve. Engineers strengthened cooling systems, adjusted fuel flow, and reinforced structural parts. Crews adopted new tactics for night missions and radar-guided attacks. Some variants removed guns to increase bomb load. Commanders tested the aircraft in reconnaissance and navigation roles. Reliability grew through steady upgrades. By mid-1945, the bomber operated with greater efficiency and fewer failures than ever before. The bomber's impact can be seen in the numbers. Thousands of sorties struck industrial centers, ports, and supply routes. Losses occurred, but they stayed far below early estimates. The aircraft showed how long-range strategic power could shape a distant war. Japanese pilots respected the bomber's capability. One veteran said, "We tried to reach them, but they always climbed higher. They fought from the sky, where we could not follow." Early doubts about the aircraft faded as victories mounted. The legacy is clear. The B-29 proved that altitude, range, and precision could change the direction of a war.